Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right into something today that is incredibly frustrating, but also completely universal. You set a goal, right? You're highly motivated, you put in the hard work for days, weeks, maybe even months, and then a tiny, seemingly insignificant slip-up happens, and instead of just brushing it off, you throw your hands up and completely abandon the entire long-term goal. Today, we're going to look at exactly why our brains do that, and much more importantly, how to break free from it using some really great insights from Thomas Alethea's 12 Steps to a Good Life.
Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this highly relatable scenario. You've been on a strict diet and you've been doing amazing. Then you're at a party and you have a single piece of cake. It is just one slice, but instantly it's like a switch flips in your brain. You suddenly decide the entire diet is completely ruined, so you end up eating 3 more slices and just tossing the diet out the window the next day. Why on earth does one slice of cake have the power to destroy weeks of progress? Why does that single stumble feel like a total reset to zero?
The answer lies in something clinicians actually call the abstinence violation effect, or AVE for short. Now, knowing this is incredibly empowering because it proves that your reaction is not some personal moral failing. It definitely isn't proof that you lack character. It's simply a predictable mental glitch. The abstinence violation effect is basically a psychological trap where a single minor lapse makes you abandon your goal entirely. You are abstaining from a behavior, you violated that abstinence, and the psychological fallout from that pushes you right back into the exact behavior you were trying to avoid in the first place.
I mean, just look at this quote right here. Well, I've already given in, so I might as well eat the whole thing. Sound familiar? It's the classic voice of the AVE trap. This specific thought process kicks off a total psychological downward spiral. It creates this rationalization that because you aren't perfect anymore, the effort just isn't worth it. Now, the source Kex points out that this effect is really prominent in substance abuse recovery, but it honestly applies any time a person attempts to change a habit. It's what keeps us stuck for years, blaming ourselves and despising our own perceived weakness.
So, what actually sets this trap off? It really helps to know exactly what to watch out for in your day-to-day life. The source material outlines specific high-risk triggers for the abstinence violation effect. These include stressful events, interpersonal conflicts, social pressure, and negative emotions. Now notice something here? None of these are about the goal itself. If you get into an argument with a loved one, or you just have a really stressful day at work, your defenses drop. Your brain is actively looking for comfort, and that makes you highly susceptible to a minor lapse, which then triggers the AVE.
Section 1. The cognitive trap. All or nothing thinking. And this brilliantly illustrates the core issue. This cognitive trap happens when we mistakenly view our progress in absolutely rigid terms. On one side, we have this completely flawed view. Your goal is either perfect or it's completely ruined. But on the other side, we have reality. Progress happens in shades of gray. Most of life happens in the gray areas. Real success is rarely black and white, but when we operate under that flawed view, a normal human stumble gets interpreted as a catastrophic failure, triggering the abstinence violation effect and sending us all the way back to square one.
Now you might be wondering, okay, but if I just had more willpower, wouldn't I be fine? Let's demystify that right now. Popular culture likes to treat willpower like a magic shield or some permanent character trait that you either have or you don't. But the reality, according to the text, is that willpower is a finite resource that naturally depletes. It gets tired, just like a muscle. When you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or sick, your willpower plummets. It is short-lived, and it will eventually fail. Relying entirely on raw willpower is practically a guarantee that you're going to stumble and fall straight into the AV trap.
Section 2. Planning for the stumble. So if we know our willpower is eventually going to fail us, we need an escape route. To build this, the source material introduces a really fantastic mental strategy developed by psychologist Gabriela Oettingen. It's called the WOOP method. WOOP stands for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, and Plan. First, wish. You define a specific, meaningful goal. Second, outcome. You realistically visualize the absolute best possible outcome of achieving it. Third, obstacle. You identify the internal or external barriers that might try to stop you. And fourth, plan. Create a concrete strategy to respond to that obstacle. It's really those third and fourth steps that completely bypass the abstinence dilation effect.
So the crucial point is exactly how you formulate that plan. And that brings us to implementation intentions. This basically means pre-deciding your actions using simple if-then statements to overcome the obstacles you just identified. You're basically taking the emotional decision-making completely out of the heat of the moment. When the obstacle hits, your tired, willpower-depleted brain doesn't have to figure out what to do on the fly. You've already decided for it. Let's look at how practical this actually is. Check out the obstacle in column 1, feeling exhausted after a long day at work. Now, your typical reaction might be to just skip the gym entirely, right? Which then triggers the AVE. But using an implementation intention in column 2, you create an if-then plan. If I feel too tired after work, then I will put on my workout clothes immediately and do just 5 minutes of exercise. You're actively outwitting your own avoidance tactics here. By setting the bar ridiculously low, you bypass the resistance, and let's be honest, once you start, you're probably going to keep going.
But as you begin implementing these plans, there's a fundamental truth you just have to embrace. You need to accept that part of you simply does not want self-discipline, and it never will. The source describes this as a trickster side of our unconscious mind. Its sole aim is immediate gratification and pure comfort. It acts kind of like an unruly, cranky child trying to protect you from doing anything hard. Battling this trickster is literally just part of the human experience. And once you normalize this internal struggle, you stop viewing your sudden desire to quit as some big sign of failure.
Section 3. The power of self-compassion. Look, when our willpower naturally fails and we stumble, self-criticism is usually our immediate backup plan. Let's compare these two mindsets directly. We tend to think that beating ourselves up will somehow magically motivate us to do better next time. But the text is super clear on this. Self-criticism just causes a ton of unnecessary suffering, it drains your energy, and it leads straight back to giving up. On the flip side, self-compassion actually builds willpower, self-discipline, and true resilience. When you look at your goals and your setbacks through the lens of self-compassion, you accomplish way more, and you actually enjoy the process.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it completely reframes the whole concept of a lapse. The question is not whether you lose your healthy habits, but how quickly you get them back. Read that again. It explicitly assumes you are going to stumble, because life gets in the way. But a stumble doesn't reset you to zero. It's not a total failure. It is literally just a temporary pause. The goal is simply to correct it immediately, without hauling around all that heavy baggage of guilt and shame.
To summarize all of this, here is your exact blueprint for climbing out of the abstinence violation effect trapdoor. First, drop the self-criticism. We know it doesn't work. Second, use those if-then implementation intentions to plan ahead for your obstacles. Third, take ridiculously small steps to bypass your mind's natural resistance, like that 5-minute workout trick. And finally, treat your lapses as learning experiences, not character flaws. Be a scientist studying your own behavior. Figure out what triggered the lapse, adjust your plan, and just keep moving forward.
I want to leave you with this incredibly powerful insight on cognitive reframing from the source text. You can both fall short today and do better tomorrow. This is the ultimate antidote to all or nothing thinking. It uses both and language instead of black or white language. It's this incredibly liberating realization that making a mistake today does not erase the progress you've already made, and it absolutely does not define what you're capable of doing tomorrow.
So knowing all of this, the next time you eat that single slice of cake, or you miss a workout, or you snap at a friend, how will you handle your next stumble? You now have the perspective and the practical toolkit to treat it as a normal human moment, practice a little self-compassion, and just step right back onto your path. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it helps you build a much more resilient and joyful life. See you next time.